Hey Mason, it's Dr. Scott. I have some feedback for you on your Essay 2 draft. Just as a quick reminder, the things that I'm looking for in the Essay 2, particularly the revision, are a thesis statement. A thesis statement that's focused. It makes an argument, something that's debatable about two flood wall murals, and that there are good supporting reasons. So think of those as like the paragraphs, like the smaller claims that you need to make in order to support the paper's overall thesis. I'm also looking at supporting details, and so in your body paragraphs, are you using details to back up the argument that you make, and are you explaining how those details support your paper's overall argument? I'm also looking at organization and transitions and paraphrases, your ability to integrate paraphrases, and there's a few other smaller criteria that I'm looking at as well. I think I'm going to focus on maybe the top 2 or 3 criteria that I'm looking for in the assignment: thesis statement, supporting details, and I might talk a little bit about organization and transitions in your draft. Now, your draft was pretty short, so it was kind of hard to judge where you're at. I did appreciate that the thesis statement, like, I kind of understand where you're going. The flood of 1939 and the downtown Chillicothe murals show how resilient and how much strength the people of Portsmouth have. They point out the hardships we went through and the contrast of how colored people and setting and body language. So it's a little confusing through here. Through that right there confused me a fair bit. But I'm also, as far as like focus, I think that there's work to do in the thesis statement to focus it a bit more. I think the sentences need to come together. But then I also see you're writing about resilience, you're writing about strength, and then I also see hardships down here. Those are 3 different things that you can kind of write about. You can write about how they characterize those hardships, you can write about resilience, and you can write about strength. And I think these 2 are kind of, they can all be related to each other. But right now it's hard for me to understand what is the main focus of this paper. So I'd say pick one and stick with it. And I think resilience might be the way to go, that the town is resilient. So, and that's up to you. Like, maybe you have a good argument for why they need to be separate. But right now I'm not seeing kind of like why we've got 3 different things kind of going on in the thesis statement. So that, I think, but I do kind of like that you, like, all right, I can see the direction of where Mason might be going with this paper. In the body paragraphs, I think you have a little bit of detail in there. I do think that there are places where more detail is needed. I think the important step that needs to be done after you have good detail in your essay is to explain and interpret how that detail supports your overall argument. So if you're trying to say in this paragraph that color shows how resilient we are or how tough we are, I don't see you doing that all that much. You give us details from the mural, but you're not kind of explaining, here's how I think these details connect to that idea that I had about how tough or how resilient or how how we're able to bounce back. So I see you saying there's a lack of color in this because putting it in colors would take away from the sorrow, and not doing so emphasizes this. A little confusing right there, but bring it back to that idea about resilience. If the paper is about resilience, you need to connect it. You need to connect those details back to it. And same thing here when you're talking about the 1930 or the downtown Chillicothe Street mural. It's uplifting. How does that relate to resilience? I think you need to kind of explain that. And then these details that you have, they also need to be connected to the paper's overall thesis statement. Same thing kind of needs to happen in the body language paragraph. I do kind of like to say something quickly about organization. Like, I see a good reason why you're starting here. You think color is the most important way that Dafford is getting ideas across. It was less clear like why we went from there to body language. I think you have bigger fish to fry. I think kind of narrowing down that thesis statement, explaining how your details, I also think you need to kind of just get more writing out. You need to get more content down, more details in the paragraphs, and explain those details, and then maybe we can play around with organization. So to quickly sum up, focus thesis statement, or actually write about all what the thesis claims. So if you're going to write about all 3 of those items that I mentioned, okay, they should be connected. I think you're probably better off just kind of focusing your ideas on Need more details in the paragraphs. You start, you tell us some things. I think you need to kind of show us a bit more detail with a bit more detail in the murals. And then finally, interpret or connect those details to the paper's overall argument. How does this detail from the 1937 flood wall mural, how can I interpret that in a way that shows resilience? That work needs to happen between now and the revision. All right, that's my feedback. If you've got questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And there'll be time to maybe chat a little bit tomorrow and or later this week and also early next week. All right, Mason, that's it for now.